Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest webinar from Sport Business. I'm Ben Cronin, the Europe editor for the publication. The topic for today's session is designing and monetizing the next generation of sports streaming services, and it's brought to you by our sponsor, Agora. We've got a nice split of rights holders as well as marketing and technology experts who are going to provide their take on where things are headed in the sports streaming space. On the rights holder side, we're joined by Jordan Brown, who's the Content Marketing Director for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. He's responsible for marketing the MMA Promotions Fight Pass OTT service. We also have Ricky Tusu, who is the Commercial Director for the International Hockey Federation, which has also recently launched its own streaming platform, the Watch Hockey platform. They're joined by Kenny Ager, who's Client Services Director for digital marketing agency WePlay, which has helped UFC, amongst other rights holders, to market their Fight Pass streaming service. And last but not least, to provide a technology perspective, we have Tony Wang, who is the co-founder and head of emerging markets and technology for Agora. Thanks to all of our panelists for joining us, and thanks to everyone who's tuned in to watch. If you've got a question for the panel, please post it using the chat function down the right-hand side, and I'll try to come to you at the end of this discussion. So, Jordan, I'd like to start with you. UFC Fight Pass, it's had a very successful period. I think my understanding is your subs were up 41% in 2020. Do you want to talk a little bit about what's driving that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, hello to everyone tuning in, and thank you for taking the time to join us. And I really need to thank you for the title of marketing expert, Ben. Can't say that I've ever been called that in public forum before. So thanks for setting things off properly to begin. But just on the subject of UFC Fight Pass, we've had an incredible year in terms of performance for 2020. Obviously, any marketer or brand experienced some way, shape, or form of difficulty as soon as the pandemic hit. It was a challenging adjustment, to say the least. But being an OTT and just by nature of it being a residential platform, we had a very unique opportunity to reach out to consumers who were at home, really had not much to do, and were in dire need of entertainment, especially sports entertainment. Another added benefit to that is with UFC. So while all other major sports leagues kind of shut down entirely on a global scale, UFC was the first sporting platform that was up and running with live events, and it only took us a couple of months. So there was no shortage of content for us to push at a time where there is a desperate need for live sporting content or some form of entertainment. Just kind of the global scale that we've always been able to achieve was a massive benefit to us. And thank you to the group over at WePlay on the performance marketing end and on the subject of UFC Fight Pass. We were really able to put together a strategy that helped us not only push out this live content and make people aware of what was going on at the time, but also look at different and unique ways to position ourselves in front of new audiences who weren't necessarily exposed to combat sports in the past, and really diversify not only the creative that we're pushing on the moment, but the messaging of this is a milestone moment where we have a captive global audience that you really need to be a part of. And we created kind of a cultural conversation in ways. And that's just one of the many strategies that led to the growth for 2020. We launched a few different product verticals, namely original programming, which I'll get into a bit later. But you love to throw around the term team effort or the phrase team effort, and that was truly a team effort by every single person who was a part of UFC, who worked on an event, who helped us get back up and running, and it showed in performance. And our trajectory has been very positive for the past 12, 18 months. I only expect it to continue to grow.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Jordan. Kenny has dropped out, but I'll ask him a little bit about what's driving that success shortly when he rejoins, hopefully. Ricky, you're at an earlier stage in your evolution. I think it was September last year that you launched Watch Hockey. Can you tell me where you are in terms of the product development?
Sure. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me on the panel, and very warm welcome to everyone who's taken time out. In terms of the question you asked, Ben, I think we've been talking to our current OTT partner for a long time, and we invested a lot of time in the pre-launch phase, purely because we had already looked at some of the learnings we had in the past. We looked at the gaps that we had in our broadcast distribution, and we wanted to make sure that when we go to the market with a 24/7 kind of a service, we've addressed those. And so we signed a long-term partnership with Nagra, who's our OTT provider, back in March 2020. And within 6 months, we hit the market with our offering. And the timing was not helped by the pandemic, but and the fact that we are a global body, we are dependent on international matches. But despite the challenges, I think we managed to do very well in terms of getting some of the matches back on. And yeah, in last I would say 6 to 8 months, we've had a very healthy growth. We now have users on our platform for 80 odd countries directly interacting with us. We have a very healthy registration rate. Around 45 to 50% of the people who are actually coming on the platform and engaging are also registering, which is a very promising sign for us. And what's really also happened is that the intention behind the platform was always to build a truly global narrative for our sport, and it was not just about FIH events going over there. And our national associations and continental federations have seized the opportunity there, and they've come forward and collaborated with us on the platform. So today, when you go on the platform, you actually see a complete showcase of hockey from all around the world, which is what we always intended it to be. So for us, so the product in itself is fully out there, but at the same time, it's a content platform. It is going through its journey of learning and fine-tuning things as we move along. And we've kind of identified certain milestones over the next 6 to 9 months that we want to address. But in terms of functionality, we've got a content platform up and running, and we've got it on all Play Store and iOS. We have a web version of it, and it's interesting. I mean, there was a big debate internally about the need for a web version and whether we should keep it mobile only. And we went ahead with the web version, and I would say we've been rewarded to a large extent because we've seen a very sticky or a very high engagement rate in terms of over 20 minutes on our mobile platforms or over 45-50 minutes on the web version. So we've really seen fans coming out and actually watching their favorite sport on the platform. So it's really an encouraging signs for us as we start this journey.
Sorry, I've got to turn myself off mute there. So, Kenny, we're obviously talking about two very different types of platforms here. You know, one which is based on a subscription, the other which is about achieving a critical mass of viewers and is based on an ad-funded model. What, in your view, are the features that the best streaming products have in common, if you like, and what, in your experience, are the best ways to avoid customer churn?
Yeah, good question, Ben. Can you hear me okay first? I dropped off and I was exited out of the room, so I thought maybe I didn't make the cut. But
yeah, no, we can hear you.
Someone's got injured and I'm back in. So firstly, thanks for having all of us to the panel today, Ben. This is a really interesting topic that sport needs some home runs right now. We've seen a lot of revenue that's been lost over the last 18 months, and live streaming is a really interesting proposition to develop revenues around. So it's a key topic to get right. I think, to answer your question directly, the most successful streaming services, one of which is on the call that we're working with, are, to your point, keeping users engaged. That's the key message from your question there. And so what I thought I'd share just from our experience to start things off is some of the key behavioral changes and migrations that we've seen, not just in the last 18 months since lockdowns began, but gradually over the last few years that has been accelerated by lockdown, because the people that are leaning into these challenges are the ones that are generating the most value, either through a subscription or an ad-funded model, because ultimately it comes down to eyeballs and engagement. So the first is that streaming's up. Streaming content and streaming demand is significantly up, particularly because of lockdown. We've seen a 95% increase in in-home media consumption across the industry, and we've also seen a 65% increase in video streaming. That's not just a sports thing. That's because video streaming has gone from being an edutainment form or a linear alternative to actually a way of life. It's not just entertainment now, it's how we speak to our colleagues, our friends, our families. Even the NHS and the education systems in Europe have used video streaming to connect the world. So video streaming is an inherent behavior. But what's also interesting is that live events are down in terms of frequency. This is the biggest impact or effect that an industry has had since the World War II on the amount of events that have been changed or cancelled. So you've got this interesting dynamic where there is less live events and yet there is more time on streaming, which means the people and the platforms that have really embraced content beyond the live, they're the ones that are generating that engagement, which inherently has a direct impact on churn. And what we mean by churn is simply people who subscribe or sign up to a platform and then leave for various reasons that can be due to the fact that the value proposition beyond their live streamed events is not significant enough. So that's one of the first key points. Second key point is that we're seeing a lot of platforms like NFL, NBA, UFC really embrace athlete access. And the reason why that is because the athletes and the sportsmen and women that we love to watch, they're the ones that really hold the audience attention. I'm a Formula One fan, and just to take an example, Lewis Hamilton has more fans on Instagram than his Mercedes Formula One team and Formula One put together. There's 2 million more fans than both of them put together, which means if more content is created around the athletes and the athletes are baked into the commercials of these projects, then you have a higher chance of creating engagement, which also, again, creates more content beyond the live events. And live events are great if you're the NBA and you've got games happening every single week of the year. But if you've got less live events, with one of our clients, FIFA, for example, you've got to build those firework moments for your engagement strategy. So a shift from teams and events into athletes and moments is an important subject matter. And finally, we have to accept that the younger generation that's growing up into our future consumers and purchasers have been surrounded by a generation of change in social media where it's not accepted or expected for you to pay for content. Advertisers pick up the tab. And therefore, a whole generation has grown up feeling like they want to consume content at speed and with complete control over how they view it, but they also want financial flexibility. And so we're seeing some real impact and growth in the organizations that are embracing price changes and changes to financial structures to allow people to just watch the sports and the events that they love with that little bit more flexibility, or supported by an ad funder. So that's what we're seeing. And then finally, to answer your point about churn, I mean, we could have a whole webinar about churn because it's so important to drive the subscription model. The subscription model is based on retaining customers, whereas ad funding isn't. And what's key to the subscription model is your ability to grow net subscribers versus gross, which means once somebody has subscribed to the platform, how do you keep them there? And that simply comes back to your content programming and how you market the value proposition beyond your firework or tentpole moments throughout the year. I hope that provides just a little bit of context on those 2 points.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that's a good place to bring in Tony. Tony, we're talking here. Kenny's talking about beyond live, athletes access, and also sort of some of the things that younger generations maybe not quite so willing to pay for content. Have this expectation that they can get it for free. What sort of features are your clients, and you have some broadcast clients, you have, a wide array of sort of entertainment clients. What sort of functionality are they asking for this sort of new generation of streaming products?
Yeah, thank you. So I think from my point of view, I think young generation, they are more willing to pay for the right amount of content, right? And then right kind of interactive, right? So imagine you go to a sports event like real person, and the celebrity, the talent player is boxed in a glass box and very far from you. You can only watch. There's no interaction, and here's the demand that you pay up, right? You're like, why? I can go to Instagram. I can go to follow their Facebook. I Twitter. Maybe he will even talk back to me. I can go to Cameo. I can go to other, softwares, maybe Masterclass. I can actually interact with him. So you have to tell me why you're selling me last century's interactive and demand big bucks, where the new social media apps is giving me all kind of stimulation that I'm already get used to. And by the way, they pay a lot more, whether it's intentionally paying or not unintentionally by absorbing the ads in front of them, click on the purchase link in Facebook feeds, right? That's number one. Number two, we are not designing the experience for this most efficiency entertainment device, which is a mobile phone. Look at how many camera we have. Like this is the old one has like 3 camera. The new ones have like 5 camera. We're not designing for this experience. The wallet is tied into it. One hand operation. It's AI recommendation versus you do the search. All those experience we are still living in the previous stage when I was in college, like streaming real networks. I mean, I'm a big fan of real networks, right? We're still there. Nothing has changed too much. The AI UI, a little bit fancy, Web 2.0, different color scheme, but we are not changing it. So I think it's not the Gen Z. I mean, look how much money they spend on sneakers. They're buying NFT now, virtual puff, right? They're buying those things. So they are willing to spend money, but you got to give them the reason, the right reason. You got to bring them to the things that they are already comfortable with. Don't demand them to change their behavior backwards. Embrace them. Allow engagement before and after the thing, such that they feel they are engaged with the content, engaged among us. There's a lot of the apps we saw during the COVID time, the kind of embrace, a social layer, right? Dropping audio, social video, right? Co-watching, right? So I think this is the beginning of it. And, you just need to think towards that direction. Why would a user, content is king. Why would a user leave a king's court and go to another social media place to just talk about it, right? Why can't you just keep them here? You own the rights. You produce the rights. You produce the content. You are very hardworking, getting the hard part done, and then you only to send them off once the streaming is finished. Like, hey, all right, door closed, club is finished. You guys go to another bar and have fun. Oh, by the way, leave all your money on that bar because we are down here. Right. So this is what I feel.
Yeah. Jordan, do you want to? Well, 2 questions. What's UFC's target audience for Fight Pass, and have you thought about any of these sort of new monetization strategies to target them? Rather than the subscription model that you currently have. Micropayments. You're looking at things like that.
Those are great questions. And first, I want to say I agree with everything that Tony is saying. It's a matter of communication and customization for any potential subscriber and or customer to your product. You need to be able to reach them in a way that they want to be reached, because we live in such a diverse and over-communicative world where sometimes you get sensory overload, and there are so many devices that you're paying attention to where you have second or third screen experiences. So there is such a finite window where you need to capture a user's attention, and you need to be able to position exactly what you have in a way that ensures that it's most apt to getting them to convert or capturing their interest. So that was a fantastic piece of information there. And then in terms of looking at for UFC Fight Pass, what we're trying to do in terms of just being first and shifting and looking at different ways that customers can engage and remain within the platform. Kenny made some great points about churn to begin with, but in terms of looking at what we're doing for microtransactions or looking into specific audiences or core audiences, the platform itself, upon its inception, was designed to service the hardcore combat sports fan. It didn't necessarily start off as the global property that it has become. Essentially, what we were doing was putting live UFC broadcasts on a live stream and a digital platform. And eventually that grew into, well, why don't we then shift and position ourselves into the premier streaming combat sports OTT in the world? And so what we've gone out and done is we've acquired a host of different, what we call our live event partners, and essentially they're local and or regional MMA or combat sports circuits that act as either feeder leagues to UFC, or at times have a very strong, notable reputation of their own. And we basically made our entire value proposition off of live events to begin with. And last year, for the first time, we really leaned into looking into the human interest pieces and diving more into original programming, doing more of the storytelling so that you can get connected to an individual athlete. So that leads directly into athlete star building of someone who isn't necessarily in the UFC yet or may already be an established champion. But sometimes those stories don't always get told because what we do on a daily basis was live event focused. And I think that that really helped us diversify beyond the core combat sports fan, especially with younger audiences. If you think about what they care about most and what they engage with most outside of a paid end, whether it's a free subscription platform that's maybe ad supported, or we were talking about different social media platforms that are available from Cameo to Twitter to Instagram. All of those engagements and interactions are instantaneous, and you get a very real and immediate look into what an athlete's life could be like. And so the basis of what we were doing with the shows on the platform is, okay, what if we took that one step further and got deeper into these stories and tried to figure out what is the connective tissue, whether it's where someone is located and resides, where they grew up, their connection to their country or homeland, or maybe they're a youth that wants to break into the combat sports space in the future and they're competing and they're starting to box or practice jujitsu. And how do we carve that story up and tell it in individual ways that will help us reach audiences that wouldn't otherwise engage with the UFC Fight Pass platform. And Kenny and his team have been instrumental in helping us figure out how do we test all of these different creative iterations, and to get very granular, like how do we test these different copy iterations and how do we tweak very minor things to be able to speak to these diverse audiences to at least get them to engage with the platform outside of the paid space. So in that way, we can, in the future, find different related but not similar messages to see what they could possibly be interested in the future. Let me tell you, that's been a very fun journey. Just being able to, in real time, I love being able to speak to fans and understand what they need from us as a service. What people don't realize times is that UFC and UFC Fight Pass is essentially a platform created by fans for fans. So a lot of what we discuss is meant to service the fans in the best way possible so that their experience is great in a way that keeps them around, maintains consumers, but also making sure that their needs are met. If there are stories that we're not currently telling, we'd love to engage with consumers, hear what they want to see more of, and then try as best we can to action that to make sure that ultimately we're raising the value proposition of the platform overall in every single vertical that we possibly can.
Okay, I want to bring in Ricky here. Ricky, some of the things that we've been talking about, getting engagement, encouraging engagement, athletes involved, getting athletes involved, athlete access. Just what sort of functionality do you think? What are you looking at for Watch Hockey, and what's really a priority for you? In terms of functionality moving forwards in the future, not necessarily now, but would you like to integrate into the platform?
Thanks, Ben. First of all, I have to say that one of the points Tony was making about the bars is, I think it's pretty much the foundation of everything any brand or rights holder or media entity should be doing when it comes to building their own platforms. Because our hockey matches they go for about 60 odd minutes, but the conversation around the matches can go on for days, and I think we, as a rights holder, we'll miss the trick if we only focus on communicating around the 60-minute game and not capture the 7-day, 10-day conversation with the banter that is going around on the internet. So I think I wholeheartedly agree on that aspect, and I think that is what drives the engagement aspect as well. When you look at the linear broadcast, I would say medium, then that's in my view it's more one way, and the beauty of having your own OTT platform is that it's a two-way communication tool essentially, and it is important that you leverage it like that, and not use it like another TV network, because that's exactly what not OTT should do for you. And then I think listening to your own fans is very critical. You can throw 10 new features at them, but it should, in our view, or in my view rather, it should be done in a phased approach, because we are still a bit early in our journey. Where if we start adding a lot of different layers to it, we might overwhelm or put everything in one go. What we have to do is. And going back to Kenny's point on churn, I think we've not reached that stage where churn is a major concern for us. We're still in that growth phase where every time we inject content, we get another few thousand people coming onto the platform, and it's still an upwards trajectory. Thankfully, we've not seen anything plateauing yet. But for us, engagement is currently looking at how can we get content from all around the world. Can I get the content from Africa? Can I get content from Argentina or Australia? Because then when I do that, I add a new country or a new set of fans onto our platform. And so currently the engagement is driven by content, but yeah, we're looking at different formats like some of the gamification elements that can be driven, or we're looking at how potentially e-commerce layers can come into play and allow people to buy merchandise, or we're also looking at how some of the interactive channels, or maybe watch together kind of features, or potentially even tipping for that matter. But there is a role that each of these engagement layers have, and there's a time for each of these engagement layers to kick in as well. And so we're keeping an eye on the future, and I think we'll have to look at testing and learning from those tests, and then building on it. So for us, I think a lot of these new features or functionalities are 6 to 9 months down the line, where you will start maybe seeing them coming onto the platform. For us, we are still in that consolidation and aggregation of content mode.
Okay, and Kenny, I mean, the more people engage with content, the more you can learn about them, and Jordan was alluding it to a certain extent there. Do you want to just expand on how you're using, information gleaned from users on platforms like Fight Pass to market the service and other rights holders like FIFA?
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, I mean, incredibly important points coming out from the panel. Everything Tony said about the need to understand how younger consumers are consuming sport and content, that really is the key to unlocking the revenues. And we often debate with our client partners about whether to focus on young consumers or older consumers, and ultimately the real answer is both. They're very different behaviors that require different monetization and commercial strategies. And certainly the ability to keep younger audiences in the platforms that they want to consume is a very strong strategy, because those platforms have created monetization services so you can actually monetize a younger fan on Twitch whilst also selling a content subscription to a mid-30s Fight Pass fan. And we've actually found that, Jordan, with Fight Pass, haven't we, where your average age of a UFC fan on Twitch is 21 versus mid-30s on a content subscription. So you can actually have your cake and eat it on both sides. So it's certainly nothing to fear when we're talking about younger consumers. It's not overly complicated. We just have to find more flexible ways to engage them. To answer your question, Ben, on business intelligence, perhaps is the right phrase, BI. It's the reason why we're succeeding. It's not one of it. It's the reason. There's often a debate about, or discussion about, how to engage fans to buy a subscription for a video on demand product, and we talk about the art and science of doing that. The science is in the paid media and the audience development, and the art is in the creative messaging and the variation of that messaging. And we've been immensely successful with UFC in doing that. But the business intelligence is what's driving those decision making. So we often look at this as somewhat of a forensic approach, because the biggest thing going for an organization like UFC or FIFA or ESPN is just the huge volume of audience that they have access to, and they own that audience. They are the elite, the pinnacle of combat sports or of football or of broadcasting. But the challenge is then finding that needle in a haystack for the person who's not just interested in the sport and loves watching it, and has perhaps shown those behavioral indicators on Facebook that they do love that sport, but that they're willing to pay for it, or they're willing to commit to a level that you can monetize through ad funding. And so that forensic approach for us is always driven by BI. It tells us whether someone is not just interested but equipped to buy. It shows us where they are in the conversion funnel, and it also shows us what type of messaging based on their behavior indicators they are going to receive and respond to best. And this stat may be out of date because we've been continuing to work on it, but the last time I checked, we've run 38,000 different ad sets around the world with Jordan and his team, and that's because every person has a different personalized message that will respond better for them. And that's where it gets really exciting, because video content and your ability to watch video content, whether it's streaming on Amazon Prime, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's in an independent app, all of it is a symbiotic relationship with the consumer where you're getting their consumer data back. And when privacy changes are starting to affect the way that we can target audiences, this is really rich data. So if you know exactly what's engaging a fan and what their favorite player is, and whether he or she has watched the fight and the repeat and the highlight show and the analytics show, then you know that that person is particularly interested. And let's take an example. Adesanya, really popular fighter right now in UFC. If you know that someone is spending a lot of time watching his fights and his content, then it's much easier to upsell that user to merchandise around Israel Adesanya, or to even look at ticket sales for when he's next competing, when fans come back to venues. So it's not just the streaming element that is affected by BI and we can grow those subscriptions. It's actually the whole ecosystem of monetization of fans through ticketing, merchandise, and video content. So super important for us. It's part of our culture as opposed to just something that we do. And it's been very important for our relationship with Jordan and the team.
Okay, I want to bring in some of the questions from the audience now. I think I noticed one where someone said, are there any alternatives to the subscription model and the ad-funded model? And we've touched on that a little bit. But Tony, I was wondering whether you could explain tipping to us. I mean, it's a phenomenon in Asia, and it's a way for rights holders to make incremental revenues. Do you want to just go into that a bit? Because I think even some of the other panelists would be interested in hearing about exactly how that works and how people can make from it.
Sure. I will try to make it short. I think tipping, we should not look at this as alone, because when you watch TV, there's no reason for you to tip, right? So it's because of the medium has changed. And we talked about a lot of stuff. So if you think about what COVID has accelerated, it really changes the way how the content is being produced, distributed, interactive, enjoyed, and in the end of the day, monetized, right? The monetization is the result of the previous three change. So I give you example. Somebody mentioned about bringing the content from the world. Well, you cannot possibly sending out a 20-person crew with satellite link to every single sports event, every single local chapter, and spend $1,000 per minute production cost and still expect to make money. And you cannot possibly jam all those into the current linear program and expect audience interaction same time and seamlessly native ad placement that is not intrusion. Every 5 minutes ad play, video insert ad play. This is going to destroy the thing, So what I'm saying is, let's look at this whole thing as a new medium. This new medium is defined by non-linear injection using company like Agora partner with TVU, right? We did it with Grammy, right? So non-linear injection and your distribution is non-linear, and engagement, your audience is in the same room, same virtual room, right? So your talent, like us, we can talk to each other on the call with the customer, and your customer, your audience can interact, right? When all those new medium is finished, which we call those real-time engagement, or whatever other names, then the audience transaction happens, right? And tipping is a big part of audience transaction, right? Audience direct subscription, micro subscription. Gone with the days, just because I like the first song, I have to buy the whole CD. That time is gone, right? I can micro subscribe to that particular fighter in the UFC because I just like him. Doesn't matter if he's not champion. Somehow, somewhere, I like him. So I want to sponsor him. He's the underdog. I want to see him success, right? So one-to-one, right? That's micro. And tipping is big part of it. But to answer the tipping question, that part is easy. Technology has been mature for 10 years, right? Is to understand why you're tipping. The reason why you're tipping is because you build a personal emotional connection. So how do you bring that personal emotional connection? The content, allow them to interact. We are human. We build interaction because, I don't know you, but I go to Starbucks, I sit beside you, we are in the same zone, right? And I say, hey, what's up, Jordan? Jordan replies me right away. If Jordan was using whatever traditional method, the delay is 20 seconds, I'll wait for 20 seconds. Jordan will say, hey, Tony, what's up? The conversation, the chemistry will not happen. The emotion will not bring into it. When you don't have emotion, tipping won't happen. Because tipping is not necessary. It's a vitamin. It's not painkiller, So it only happens when you are in the proximate of ultra low latency environment, when you're together, virtually together, and emotionally touched. So live commerce, right? Live commerce is a huge part of it. Now, it's very popular in Asia. I'm not gonna using it everywhere. I think live commerce, you're gonna use it only when you understand your audience. Right? I mean, obviously, I'm not going to sell in this group some household stuff. Probably not good enough, right? We don't make those decisions, right? So I think you understand your audience, but lucky you're on this device. You understand every click, every video clip. Have they finished everything? Did they open? Did they share? Have they may leave a comment? You understand the level of engagement of every single content. You can tag them along the way, the way you want it, talking about big data, and then you tie that into your sponsorship, and the very, very easy way to do it. And the other thing, think about this device, right? I mean, what do you have? You basically, every content provider literally have a 24/7 live commerce channel. I mean, what's your cost of opening a channel like that? Zero, almost. Bandwidth cost, that's it, right? Production cost. If you don't want to do this, well, guess what? Tons of Chinese companies, tons of Indian companies from manufacturers, they are more than willing to license, hey, give me 1 hour, give me 11 midnight, give me midnight, I will sponsor your channel, give me the midnight, right? I will pay whatever cost that occurs on running this platform to Agora, to AWS, right? Whoever you're paying to, but give them a slice of running this. They want your audience, they want your eyeballs. And biggest problem with live commerce, people thinking, oh, it's a new technology. It's not. The two deciding factor for any live commerce or social commerce is A, how do you get eyeball? And does eyeball trust you, right? B, do you control supply chain? Why do I buy, let's say, Jordan has a particular black hat. Why do I buy that black hat from Kenny? Well, I want that particular black hat that is being touched by UFC, has a UFC logo. Oh, by the way, it's just from that event happened last week in Las Vegas, a special tagline to it, because Jordan was able to do just-in-time production from the manufacturer in downtown LA. That control of supply chain and limited edition with signature on it, with only 5,000 small batch, just in time, that is control of supply chain. Those two things is the winning formula, and plus data, understanding your customer, right, are the winning formula of live commerce, and that will take over Amazon. Look at what happened right now with Spotify, the stock price. Look at what happened last month. Do you know what is the most popular downloaded shopping mobile app? Not Amazon anymore. It's an unknown company called Churn. You never heard of. But it's the most popular download because they do it. It's a community. People love it, right? So I think, if you ask me, what we think when you engage audience transaction, by the way, tipping is part of it, your monetization ability per audience almost doubles or triples, if not 10x. We see in the social media space 10x, right? So I think this is worth exploring, right? Especially with the technology currently out there, that you can basically do a quick POC, gone with the days to build all those thing infrastructure that you have to spend like millions of dollars to. You can do a quick POC and give the audience what they like, and also give the patient. Don't expect like, I'm gonna turn it on, I'm gonna make 10 times more money, I'm gonna be the next Facebook. So control the internal expectation and do experiment, and finding social media people who understand it. So anyway, sorry, it's a little bit longer to your question about the tipping, but I think the audience transaction is going to take over, because that is a direct reward of engagement, and that's what is sports all about. It's about engaging.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Jordan, I want to bring you in here. I just want to understand how much Fight Pass, given what Tony said, how much Fight Pass is conscious of the entire UFC ecosystem. How much what you do marketing Fight Pass dovetails with ticket sales, event bookings, merchandising, and how much more you'd like to do.
No, that's a great question. We're extremely integrated with every different department within UFC, and work very closely together on a daily basis. Now, that being said, there aren't currently any microtransactions available within the UFC Fight Pass app itself. We are aware that technology does exist, and we've roadmapped quite a few different ways that we can integrate and utilize that functionality, some of which could potentially be announced soon, but it's just not something that's currently available. And I love a few things that Tony said there, but I think, the way that he's talking about audience engagement and how they're able to control the narrative of what's going on and create a sense of community is extremely important in having that functionality. And that's one of the things that we've looked at, especially the localization of whatever those elements may become, just because, we've started really looking at creating sites that service the needs of whichever particular region a user is in. And that just leads into a few different things that we look into in terms of live rights and just availability of content and user experience, depending on when things are live in different time zones and whatnot. But ultimately, what this does is create demand. I like using the two things that we focus on to not overanalyze or get too deep into the weeds. Is we focus on demand creation and the human experience of marketing. I think the days of when you go out with a campaign that's strictly based on shock value or doing something that is kind of a gasp type of moment to try to engage a user or get that shock value type of memory isn't as effective as being authentic and creating not only experiences but also creating content and other ways for consumers to engage not only with the content but with each other that are authentic to whatever that particular individual is looking for, and then stringing them on a longer journey to increase the active user time to let them explore the service and see what the true value in the service is that would make them stay. All of that is a piece of demand creation, and the marketing does not stop just by virtue of acquiring a consumer. You need to consistently be reminding people of why they signed up for the service in the first place, what's to come, improvements that you're looking at, ensuring them that you're listening to whatever your consumer has to say. Ultimately, they are the true foundation of any business, and they need to be catered to as such. And so that's one of the main things we look at. So, there's so much content available on the platform. There's hundreds of thousands of hours, whether it's archive footage, live footage, original programming. I think that at least in the short term, the one thing that we want to look at in terms of microtransactions is to be able to get people in to at least experience some sort of local live event that would resonate with that person for their particular region. We are no stranger to knowing that the live UFC content or any UFC content on the platform is the most premium of what's available. It's, NBA versus G League. People are going to pick the NBA games and gravitate towards the Steph Currys and LeBron Jameses every time, but we want to be able to tell the stories of those who are going to be the future of the sport for the up and coming superstars within region on a global scale. And what we found is that, particularly with the combat sports community, is one, the fans are extremely vocal, but two, they like to be first. And so with that, we kind of take that narrative and run with it. And a lot of what we do is displaying you have a front row seat to the next Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, Anderson Silva, Chuck Liddell. And also to further that point, you can go back and see the history and progression of the sport, how everything has evolved. And we're giving it to a way that's very easily locally digestible to you. And it's only going to continue to improve. So a long-winded way of we're still exploring it. It's definitely in the roadmap. It's at times it's not about who did it first, it's about who did it right. And we're just making sure that we have all of our bearings. We're trying to be as data focused, motivated, and rich as possible. And so we're still in a lengthy information gathering stage to ensure that we're providing the best possible consumer experience. And that's the first thing on our minds.
That's a great point to end on, I think, Jordan. Yeah, it's not about doing it first, it's about doing it right. So that's all we've got time for today. I'm sorry if I didn't get a chance to address everybody's questions down in the chat function. Unfortunately, Jordan's hat is not available. We don't have a merchandising arm.
It's not. This is one of one. It comes with the Bruce Lee.
Yeah, and neither is the Bruce Lee poster either, but we're working on it. So thanks to all of our panelists. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and look forward to seeing you again on the next panel. Okay, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.